Good morning. My name's Ben Wallerstein. I co-founded a business called Whiteboard Advisors. This morning I have the privilege of introducing Chancellor Klein, who's the CEO of Amplify. Amplify is a company that is really representative of the transformative role that technology can play in dramatically improving outcomes for K-12 learners. I've had the privilege of working with a piece of Amplify over the last 8 to 10 years. This is a little business that started out in the equivalent of a garage and is now serving over 200,000 educators across 50 states and 3 million students. I think it's important to note that the Chancellor's commitment to education, innovation, and technology is predicated on real-world experience. As the Chancellor of the New York City Department, or New York City Schools, he oversaw 40% increase in improvement in graduation rates. New York City Public Schools is about twice the size of the second largest public school district in the United States, Los Angeles. And this experience really, I think, convinced him of the transformative role that technology and innovation and that the private sector in developing technology could play in accomplishing the sorts of public sector goals that we have for education in this country. So I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to introduce him this morning. I'm hopeful that he'll give us a sneak preview of what they're working on. So please join me in welcoming Chancellor Joel Klein.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ben, thanks for that generous introduction. This is a post-secondary conference, but in order to make sure that the post-secondary issues are ripe for discussion, we need to focus a little on the K-12 issues as well. Those of you who got to hear Walt Mossberg, he raised this issue, which is all the rage now in K-12, about critical or higher order thinking. And a lot of people say to me, well, what is critical thinking about? And the best illustration I ever saw, this was a natural one, spontaneous, is by Alan Simpson and Erskine Bowles, who ran the Simpson-Bowles Commission for President Obama. And they always start with each telling an anecdote. And Simpson tells the one about, he's from Wyoming, about a guy in Wyoming. He's awakened in the middle of the night by a phone call. And he gets on the phone and he picks it up and he says, well, how the hell should I know? That's almost 2,000 miles from here. And his wife leans over and said, what was that about? And he said, I don't know, some idiot calling to ask if the coast is clear. Now, you see, that's a guy who doesn't get higher order thinking. Then Bowles, on the other hand, tells a story about his aunt in North Carolina in a small town. And when her husband died, basically, she called the local newspaper and started to dictate a 2,000-word obituary. And in the middle of it, the guy said, basically to him, he said, well, listen, I'd be happy to print this, but I should tell you we have a new policy. We charge by the word. At which point she said, well, if that's the case, just put Herman died. And he said, well, that's fine, but I should also tell you we have a minimum charge for 5 words. She thought for a second. She said, Herman died, Buick for sale. See, that's a woman who gets higher order thinking. So the question is, can we get all our kids to where that North Carolina woman is? So what I'd like to focus on today, really, and talk to you a little bit about Amplify and some of the exciting things. This was designed as a new business that was intentionally going to be disruptive in K-12 at News Corporation. And we're going to focus on those issues. I want to show you some of the things we're doing. But I want to put it in a larger context of what's going on in K-12, having spent almost a decade in New York City dealing with these issues. And, you know, Walt Mossberg said, and I agree, the major challenge in post-secondary in our colleges and universities is really the issue of cost. Still today, for all the other issues, our universities and colleges are recognized as the best in the world. K-12 is not so. People don't come here from other countries to learn about K-12. They learn post-secondary. So to me, the issue is really so fundamental. If we had an honest high school graduation rate in America, measuring college readiness the way they do at the College Board and elsewhere, we would be talking about 1/3 or at most 40% of our kids. And that is not a long-term winning formula. So this is not just about cost. This is really about the kind of people who will be in the future. And Amplify hopes to play a big role in all of that. So let me start with what I hope is a bold assertion that we can agree on, which is starting now, digital technology will forever change the way we educate students. And I really believe that's going to happen. It's not going to happen overnight, but it is going to happen. Now, the first question is, why should we change the way? And I think this is pretty old hat, but I want to go through it quickly for you, because I think people really don't realize what's happened in the last 30, 40 years. We're investing more, but we're simply not seeing the results. If education were a business, they would have shut it down long ago in America. Let me just show you two charts that make this point. This chart graphs in constant dollars what we spend on K to 12. And it shows that from 1970 to 2008, 40-year period essentially, we've more than doubled our real dollar spend. And then if you look at the bottom, it also shows the national reading scores on the NAEP. And the NAEP is considered the gold standard. And those are high school kids, which is obviously the most relevant measure. In the lower grades, there's been some improvement, but it doesn't endure through high school, which is when it's got to endure. So basically, what we have is a broken business model. We're pouring money into this, but we're not getting results. And another way to look at it is to look at it in connection with the rest of the world. You know, in 1970, we didn't live in the global economy that we live in now. So America's kids are now competing in an entirely different environment. And if you look at that picture, you see the same picture. We're outspending everybody else if you look on the left side of this thing, but we're not outperforming most of the countries. I mean, so we're toward the bottom in that group and significantly behind places like Finland and Korea and even Japan and Canada in performance. Those are 30, 40, 50 points. So the model is broken, and that's why we need to think about not just how we invest, but how we change the delivery of the basic service. If we don't, I'm pretty sure we're going to continue to see these results, and that's going to, as I say, impact the kind of society we have. Now, somebody made this on the last panel, made this point. In every other area of our lives, we've seen dramatic changes, but schools haven't. They basically have stayed static and resisted all kinds of change. I mean, that's a classroom in 1900. That's a classroom in 1940. This is one in 1960. And here's, other than some are in black and white and the others in color. Basically, it's one teacher, 28 kids, 9 to 3 in the afternoon, in 1,500 square feet. The delivery system has really remained fixed and dramatically resisted the kinds of innovation that takes place in the rest of the world. Now, we could debate forever what the problems are, but the basic issue, if I convince you of nothing else, we really need to change in order to make sure that the next generation is better served than now. Right now, in places like New York, Chicago, Boston, and elsewhere, there are kids in the 3rd grade who we know are not going to be college ready in 10 or 12 years when they graduate from high school, if they graduate from high school. And so we have got to think collectively about a different delivery model. And one in which 3 core ideas, I believe, have to be integrated. First of all, we've got to be smart. All of you who are dealing with big data in all sorts of areas, education, we can learn. We can actually target the individual kids. Second of all, we've got to move to a much more personalized. This one teacher, 28 kids, trying to teach to the middle of a class is a broken delivery system model. We can use curriculum in order to personalize and customize. And the third thing is we can extend the day, extend the year, and get a whole hell of a lot smarter by using mobile devices. I read all the time. Just yesterday, the governor of New York in his State of the State talked about we need more and better education. One way to get us there that's realistic is to start to think about a new delivery model, one that relies on mobile devices in an entirely different way. So that's the basic premise. Now the question, I said, why we need to do this? Why do we want to start now? You know, a lot of people said to me, well, we went through this 10 years ago. A lot of people in this room were involved 10 years ago. We're going to have to, I see a few people nodding, you know, and some guy up here like me was saying, starting now, we're going to have this. And, you know, we gave everybody a PC in schools. And at least when I arrived in New York in 2002, a lot of those PCs were still locked in boxes in the basement. This is not about device. If people think this is about device, they're missing. This is about transforming the educational delivery system in a big way. Now, why do I think that can happen now? Because this is a highly resistant delivery system. And I think there are 4 converging factors that are critical to this discussion and give me great optimism for why now. The first is the Common Core standards. Most of you know about it, but essentially we now have 45 of our states and DC come together to adopt identical standards. And the thing that's critical about that, and there are 2 testing consortia that are coming in behind it, that those 45 states will align with. What that will mean is that will drive the systems. Now, there are 2 things about Common Core. One, that they're common, and second of all, that they're core. That's going to change the way we do business. The fact that they're common means now if you're writing content, you can write across all of those states that are in orange. But the more important part, I think, is that they're different, that the core standards are designed to really implement a very different curriculum experience. That's going to mean the new content that's coming is going to have to be very different. Those people who simply re-chunk up what they had before and put it into the market and say this is aligned with Common Core are not going to get the job done. You're going to have to develop content that gets kids deeply immersed in a very different kind of educational experience. That higher order thinking I was talking about, kids' ability to write, to understand complex texts, to work collectively, those skills are going to be critical. So the fact that this is happening in 2014 is going to be a big driver. If you look at what happened in Kentucky, they did the testing aligned with Common Core, and they almost halved the number of kids who are proficient in performance. That's going to happen in those 45 states. That will be America's wake-up call, and for the first time, we'll stop making play pretend and actually realize that we're not serving our kids. Huge driver in this system. This market, this integrated market for the first time, we're talking about an almost $700 billion market, but once you have this integrated market in K-12 where people can start to look at writing for a national market, I think that's going to change the dynamics of the education market significantly. Second reason to start now, big point about resistance. Things don't work in K-12 unless teachers embrace them. And one of the things you're seeing now is a huge change in our teaching force, one that I think will be conducive to it. Look at these numbers from 1998. What we're seeing simultaneously is a graying and a greening of K-12. So where it used to be the number of 50-plus-year-old teachers was down 23%, now it's 40%. And on the other hand, those with relatively little experience has grown. We anticipate, based on retirement projections, that in the next 3 to 4 years, we could lose as much as 30% of our current workforce. So we're going to be hiring new millennial teachers, and through all the surveys and analysis, we know that they're much more conducive to a technology-driven world. After all, they grew up in a world that's very different from the one, certainly, that I grew up in. So I think that's a powerful force and an encouraging force for change. Third thing, the economics of K-12 are changing. When I showed you those graphs about the great growth, that growth is now flatlined overall. And going forward, because of healthcare and pension and other responsibilities, school districts have got to think differently about the way they're focusing in K-12 and how they're spending money. And that, I think, will ask them to focus on productivity issues they haven't focused on. Already you see states getting into this space, looking at, as I'll talk about, blended models. Federal government just did Race to the Top of the Department of Education and took 16 different school districts on personalized learning, driving a new paradigm, using different models and using tablets and computers and so forth. And they just awarded 16 states somewhere on average of $25, $30 million each. So this is starting to move into the DNA of the school system and being intelligently incentivized. Right now, on a survey that we did at Amplify, 70% of the top 20 school districts already indicated that they want to rethink their delivery system, look more to blended models, more integrated models, and highly personalized learning. Interesting study that was done. People say, well, how are we going to afford this? One way to afford this is to think about the mix of human and technological capital in a very different and much more intelligent way. After all, the thing we want to achieve is world-class instruction. And in any other field, we've learned to understand that if you don't maximize both your human capital and your technological inputs, you're not going to get there. In a study that was done by the Parthenon Group, it's very interesting, it showed that a blended model could actually save you over $1,000 on a $10,000 per student cost in order to deliver effective educational services. So I think this is not only more effective, but a more efficient delivery system, and I think schools will come to realize that. And then finally, as Walter and others, I mean, nobody would have predicted 3 years ago what's going on in mobile hardware costs. I mean, for the first time when I was a chancellor, you know, we had computer labs and stuff, but it made it seem like some boutique-y, one-off thing. I'm talking about creating an entirely different learning experience using one-to-one computing to extend a day, extend a year, engage kids in an entirely different way. And indeed, if the kid has his or her own device, for the first time, you can constantly get smarter and smarter about the kids' work. It's just not just Amazon and Google that are getting smarter and smarter. We in K-12 need to do it. In one way, this device will tell you the things they click on, the games they like to play, the curriculum they find engaging. And that will create a positive feedback loop, just like in any other area of our society and economy. So those 4 factors, if you look at the average cost, I actually think that these are projections that were done by one of the analysts, but I actually think it's going to come down more quickly to a $200 or $250 price point for mobile devices, and it's going to change the economics of the field and the adaptation in the school systems. So now the question, why digital technology? I guess the obvious answer is because this is where kids are doing everything else. I mean, those of you who have kids, you know, you are a recent father. I mean, I'm sure your kid's already swiping the iPad, right, and is asking for your password. And don't give it to them because they know how to buy these kids at a very early age. So, but no, you know, the first thing, people say, well, why the hell should we, why is this? First thing, just as a practical matter, that's the way kids are engaging in an entirely different, much more intuitive kind of learning experience. And of course, we all talked about this, the other industries that have benefited by this kind of approach. I mean, everything we do, communicate, we were talking in the last panel about newspapers, communications, healthcare, where you manage your finances. I mean, everything else has already made the leap, and education is going to have to do the same thing. And there are just a few illustrations of where it's all gone on. The other good news is, as I suggested before, schools are demanding it already. You see this going on not far from here in San Jose, California. You got the rocket ship schools that were just featured on PBS with a blended model. You've got Carpe Diem in Arizona. More and more people, when I was in New York, we created a thing called the Innovation Zone. I saw just the other day, Mayor Bloomberg doubled down on that. We created a thing called the School of One, highly personalized learning. So this is in the air and in the changing ethos of the K-12 system. And if you see recent studies, these are things that have been done by the federal government and analysis that they've done. Secretary Duncan and Julius Jankowski, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, have their own initiative. 90% of the states have gone into, under the new Common Core, adopt online assessments. Almost 60% plan to expand the use of digital textbooks, 45% of mobile devices. And this is projected for the next couple of years. Again, my prediction is that will be accelerated. But if simply that were to happen, that would be transformative in terms of a K-12 system. And probably most important, all the early indications by the research out there is digital technology can improve the learning experience. It seems pretty obvious, but on the 3 core things that matter, engagement. We have studied student engagement. And what you find is, and if students aren't engaged, I don't care how good the instruction is, it doesn't matter. In the end, when you think about a K-12 experience, it's what's coming toward a student. Could be from a teacher, could be online, could be from classmates, social networking, but what's coming in and how much is she absorbing? And so engagement is critical. Studies show that this increases engagement. Efficiency. Lots of kids can learn at different paces. When I went to the School of One, it was an 8th grade math class that was being taught. It was January 14th, and a kid was, I asked him, what are you working on? He said, I'm so glad you asked. I just started the 9th grade. Some kids can move at a very different pace. This enables us to personalize and customize. And finally, and probably most importantly, is performance. And my view is the company that can move those metrics is going to be the company that leads the disruption. And forgive me if I'm partial, but I think Amplify is going to be at the forefront of that. And we're developing a suite of products that I now want to talk a few minutes about, and Lawrence Holt, our Chief Products Officer, will demo them for you, just to give you an idea of what I think. And remember, my view of this is that it's really got to change the service delivery system. It's not about hardware. In the end, it really is about the instructional experience, the way we do it, how we mix technological support along with human capital to get it done. So Amplify has got 3 divisions, and we think this is the platform that ultimately can provide the service delivery transformation. Amplify Insight are the data and the analytics, and we'll show you a little bit of that in a second, but basically, we want to get smarter. Wireless Generation, which is a company that News Corp bought when they went into this space 2 years ago, is now servicing some 3 million kids throughout the United States, and what they're doing is bringing sophisticated analytics, small software assessments, and building on that to differentiate, come in behind that with products that will help kids move forward at their own pace in a personalized, differentiated way. Access is our platform play. This is, and you'll hear a little bit about this, this is a tablet that we are designing, which we believe should be the operating system for K-12, and it's essentially an integrated solution. It's not a tablet as we know it. It's not a tablet designed for the consumer market. It is an educational learning platform, and we'll go into some of the qualities that it has. But this is something that's not just taken off the shelf and put in schools. This is not buying a PC or even a current tablet. This is really a learning experience that has key ingredients. It's integrated. It's designed for kids to take home. So it comes with radio for 3G and 4G to deal with the equity issues for kids who don't have Wi-Fi. It comes with content. It comes with data and analytics. And it comes with software that enables the teacher to really control the user experience and integrate it in a way that makes this a learning platform. And then the 3rd division we have is Amplify Learning, which is basically our content, our curriculum that we're developing, and we believe will be a very different, engaging, immersive, gamified experience for kids that will become reinforcing on the platform and with the kind of data and analytics that drive it. The 3 of those things are complementary to each other, but school districts, some of them will want 1, some of them will want 2, and some of them will want 3. Some of them will want our platform with other people's content. That's great. Some of them will want our content off other people's platform. That's great. But those 3 elements, data and analytics to drive increased knowledge and a positive feedback loop, followed by a learning platform, a place where a kid and a school and a teacher can come together to transform the learning experience, and rich and powerful and immersive content that enables kids to really engage and move in higher order thinking. So with that, let me just start with Amplify Insight, introduce you to Lawrence Holt, who's Chief Products Officer for many years before News Corp acquired Wireless Gen. He was at Wireless Gen. Lawrence, why don't you come up here and show them a little bit of that.
Thanks, Joel. So first thing I want to show you is about Amplify Insight. And this is trying to solve the problem of data and interpreting data in classrooms. So there's already a lot of data collected in classrooms, but it tends to be in siloed systems. Teachers have a tough time getting to it. Even if they get to it, they've then somehow got to synthesize it and understand what's going on. And we think if teachers can do that more easily, that itself could lead to great change. So we've come up with this map idea. It's a product that's already in use in several thousand classrooms across the country. And let me show it to you. It basically works like Google Maps, where each of the hexagons on this map represent a learning goal, essentially a common core standard. So something that a student has to master, understand, know how to do, or a skill that they learn. And we've laid them out as a progression. So this is a progression that goes from the bottom left of the screen to the top right. This is actually 6th grade. We have all of K-12, and in fact up through AP. And so really the task of the student and the teacher is to move from the bottom left to the top right and turn the whole thing green along the way. You do that, you're done. And obviously synthesize it and test that along the way. So red means we have overlaid data onto this map from a variety of sources that it's already being collected and new ones that show us that this student has not mastered that learning goal. Green means they have. And I'm showing you here real data. We changed the names, but you can see this is actually a class level report, and you can see that there's some work to do. And in fact, if you zoom in further with the map, then you actually can see a little pie chart appears that shows us, in this case, estimating area and volume. Actually, most of the class is red, is still in need of some extra help to understand that. And then what we've done is link to the map resources. There's already a lot of content out there. It's of varying quality, and we're trying to solve that problem by bringing ratings and floating the good stuff to the top. But videos, interactive objects, games, teacher videos, professional development, all of that can be brought to bear around this specific learning goal. So it's right in the moment for the student or the teacher to help them get to the next level and go back and turn that part of the map green. The new data is coming in all the time, so it's an active map. And as you can see, it's pretty easy to make sense of. We've already got about 1 billion plus data points behind this map that we've collected. And so we're starting to be able to do the kind of analytics that Google and Facebook and others do, where we're looking at patterns and profiles of students and pathways through the map. There's no one pathway across this map. And we can start to predict where a student's going to be and what they should work on next. And I know there's some questions about this, but I think we're going to save them for the end, if that's OK. Back to you, Joel.
All right, well, don't go anywhere, because we're going to quickly move on to the next experience, which is the access experience. Now, think about what Lawrence just showed you, which is, if you could say, Lawrence is very smart, so he would have all greens on his chart. Me, not so much. I would have quite a few reds up there. The teacher can now differentiate. She can drive him to algebra, while at the same time she's still teaching me fractions. And that's very important, because if you're teaching a class of 28, if you don't get that right, some kids are going to be slowed down unnecessarily, and other kids are going to get lost in the sauce. And so this is very powerful. Now, Access is the platform that we designed this on, which is really, I believe, a true learning platform, integrated operating system for the K-12 space. Lawrence?
I think there's a, if you just click one more, there's a.
Yep.
Thank you. Good. So let me tell you about Amplify Access. What we've done, this is basically a tailored Android platform. So we've taken Android. It's still on Android under the cover. You can still install any Android app on it. But we've tailored it. We've customized it for the K-12 classroom. Our sense is that out of the box, tablets today, iPads, et cetera, grids of apps are not necessarily a great fit for what actually needs to go on in and out of the classroom to do academic work. So this tablet, when you turn it on for the first time, and I'm showing you a sneak preview. This is something that we're piloting right now in several districts in the US. It knows who you are. It knows what courses you're studying. Each of one of those notebooks is representing a course that you're taking. It's already integrated, got that data from the school system. And so the interface is organized around your work. As you can see at the bottom, your day at school. And it can do that right from day one. If we flip and look at the teacher's side of that, then the teacher has a slightly different interface that we've designed. One of the things they can see as a class starts, so imagine you're all coming into my class. I, as a teacher, have my tablet. I can see who was absent yesterday, so they may have missed something and need extra help in today's lesson, and I can see who didn't do the homework, which may have been preparation for what we're actually going to do in class. So straight away, I know which of you is going to need a little bit more of my attention and possibly is going to be trouble. I'm watching you. So then what happens is I start the class, and just by walking into the class, turning on their tablet, kids essentially we're pairing the devices between the teacher and the kids who are physically present, or they could even join the class remotely, obviously. And so you can see who's arrived at class, and 2 kids are missing. So essentially what I just did is take attendance, and that's been sent already to the school system. So saving a couple of minutes every single period across the country. So that's one of our focus areas has been, we know teachers buy into this technology when it starts saving them time and making life easier. So that's one of the little ways that we can do that. We can also show them what every student is looking at during the class on their tablet. So another big push for us is to help classroom management work in a classroom where teachers worry that kids could be doing anything on these tablets. So I can see one of the students here is playing Angry Birds. That's probably not on-task behavior, so I can call them out. And you can see pretty quickly students get the idea that they're in class, and so they're sort of within the force field that the teacher's created for that 45-minute period or whatever it is. Here's how the content appears. So we've also created tools to help any teacher create really high-impact content. So adding images and videos and great learning objects to the content that they already have, and bringing it into a world where it's going to be a lot more engaging for their students. So instead of paper worksheets and tests, we've put all of that onto the tablet, so it's now interactive. And here on the left is actually a playlist that the teacher has prepared ahead of class for what they're actually going to do during this class. And I'm going to choose to send this quiz to kids. So here's the kids' view. They see the same as the teacher. That quiz just arrived, and then I would take that on the device itself. All of that data is being fed back in real time to the teacher, and of course back to the map I just showed you. So it's all, even in-class quizzes, as long as it's aligned with the Common Core standards, is actually helping teachers understand what a kid is ready for next. And you can also see the little lock, the padlock there is showing us that we've actually locked down the tablet so you can't cheat. It's an option the teacher could set, because maybe the right thing is to allow students to go and research these answers, but they can have that choice. And another control is teacher hits one button and it actually locks every device. So we've been doing a lot of thinking and piloting for those kind of functions. There's also a lot of content that we preload on these devices. So as Joel said, we're not just selling you a tablet. It's a tablet. It's got customized software. And it's got content from these partners, which we're very excited about. Khan Academy is preloaded. CK12, which is open source textbooks, Encyclopedia Britannica, and some others. And this is a list that we're adding to. And since it's preloaded, that might seem like a small deal. But actually, for school bandwidth, that's a big deal. If everyone's going to start streaming videos during class, for a lot of schools across the country, that's just going to bring down the infrastructure. So we've been smart about preloading. Again, we can do that based on the profile of the kid and the data. So that's Amplify Access.
And then the third piece, which you don't have to go anyplace, we'll do this quickly. The third piece is learning. So what we've shown you now is building on a map of data and analytics that enables you to get smarter and customized on a learning platform that's optimized, we believe, for the schools and that contains basic content. Then the third piece is a curriculum we're developing from K to 12 in math, science, and English language arts, all aligned with the new Common Core, which, as I said, is going to hit 45 out of 50 states in 2014. And so now I'd like Lawrence to just demo for you some of the kind of curriculum that we're developing to give you a sense of a different delivery system, one that integrates home, school, gets the kid to see this platform as a place where really learning can integrate, and gives the teacher an extended day, extended year type of opportunity that we think has never existed before.
Thanks, Joel. So this is Amplify Learning, and I'm going to give you a sneak preview of the science curriculum that we're working on. So the first thing we've done is to take the next generation science standards, which are the new standards, emerging standards for science, and break them into problems and questions that kids get interested in. We believe that when a student has a puzzle or a challenge in front of them, they're much more engaged in the learning, and they're pulling rather than the teacher is pushing. So that's what we've done across science. And in this case, we've built a little animated movie of, this is a 16th century doctor called Sanctorius, who identified that something happens even when he's just resting, he loses weight. Something going on with breathing. So what is happening when I breathe? He actually died before he solved the problem. So now you, as 7th graders, are inheriting this scientific problem of why do we breathe? And you're still at home, so this is pre-class. And so the next thing that we give you is a simulation. So we've been building these authentic models and simulations just like real scientists use. This one obviously simplified for middle school. And in this case, it's the human body. So we're showing you the respiratory system and the circulatory system, and you can actually interact with it. So you're not watching a movie now. You are changing the, you're feeding the patient. We call him Slim is our model. And the simulation will run. You can have him run, do activity, and start to see what happens. Now you're ready for class. And so when you arrive in class, remember, everything that you've done so far has generated data. That data has flowed to the teacher. So the teacher would be able to make some decisions that result in giving different groups of kids slightly different problems. So here, you're now going to be put into a team, and you get a letter from a peer with a problem to solve. And you're going to now go and research that. And so we give you a set of tools to, you're going to be reading, and reading and writing are a big part of the new science standards, not just the English language arts standards. So we want students to be reading scientific material. They're practicing the skills of asking questions and identifying evidence, and all of that's happening in this custom e-reader environment. And then perhaps the team unlocks, when they're ready, when they've done sufficient pre-work, this lifelike simulation, previously sort of only available to scientists. But here what we're actually doing now is flying into the body and into lungs, and it's going to take us right down to the molecular level, so extremely detailed simulation that kids can use to start to understand. And this is actually where oxygen molecules start to pass into the bloodstream, so it's the moment for some kids where they understand how those two systems fit together. Now I'm ready to make my diagnosis, and again, so I'm going to be asked to do that in the simulation. So we're taking you through a sort of differential diagnosis process, and then finally I'll actually write that. That's my homework, and I'll submit that. So to the question earlier on about creation versus consumption on devices, we already have in schools pilots where kids are quite happily doing their homework and typing actually on the device, which has the advantage that the teacher gets it straight away and can give feedback. So that I'm done, except we wanted to give kids opportunities to go further. And in this case, what we've done is work with some of the leading game developers to create games. And educational games have a checkered history. Some of them are, kids can tell when something is not really a game or it's a bad game. And so we have been trying really hard to create these and playtesting them with kids nonstop. And you can see here, what I'm doing is actually operating the body, and if I succeed, then I get to the next level where I actually get to do the same thing in a plant. So I'm learning about photosynthesis, and even though we haven't actually touched that yet on the syllabus, it's coming up later. So I'm getting ready for what comes next. And that then is my homework. We think we might have to come up with a new word for homework because it's too much fun. Thank you. Joel.
So that's essentially one team's vision of really a transformative play in K-12. And I know so many of you out there are working in this space. And so if I can step aside from Amplify, and as a former schools chancellor say, this is really some of the most important work we can do as a nation. Because if we don't transform K-12, then we're going to be looking at a problem down the road of kids who are massively underprepared or unprepared for what the 21st century global economy will demand. So those of you in this space, I thank you, and I look forward to a time 2-3 years from now when we can genuinely say that K-12 education looks very different from the way it looked when I grew up in 1950. Thank you.
Well, I think you've had an extraordinary view of what education can be and should be. Joel has to catch a plane shortly, but we're able to take, he's willing to take some questions from you, and I'm sure that that presentation stimulated a lot of them. Bobby, there, turn around the front.
Good morning. My name is Michael Haney. I'm from Canyon Springs High School here in North Las Vegas, Nevada. There's my big boss. I'm the education computer strategist. One of the things that we are going through right now, I'll be rude and I'll mention your competitor data-wise, is that we're seeing in our English department, teachers concerned about documenting their students' growth and kind of being locked in. I didn't see anything in your presentation where you had writing on the students' parts. So if you could kind of address that.
Sure. No, and that's an important point, and thank you for that, and thank you, Superintendent. Great to have you here today. But basically, if you look at our curriculum, you will see extensive writing and actually how you want to document. One of the things that's very important, we're all caught up in a lot of arguments about value add and all. One of the things we have found, if you look at the amount of time a kid's spending reading on these learning platforms and the amount of time she's spending writing, you get a really accurate picture of what kind of performance changes. And you can also see which classes are doing a lot more and which ones are engaged. But writing, somebody asked a question of Walter Mossberg, and I couldn't agree more. These devices have got to be creation devices as well as reception devices, and that's a key part of everything we're doing. Some of our kids are writing with styluses, some of them are using keypads, and some of them are just typing away on the glass, but it's a critical part. The most important thing, for the first time, the teacher now knows exactly how much of it is going on, whether there's more of it going on or less of it going on, and whether Lawrence is doing it and Joel's not doing it. And that's critical, and it's going to make us a whole hell of a lot smarter without trying to measure things that really might distract us from that.
Question?
Hello, my name is Isaac Strack. I'm on the board of directors for the Wasatch Institute of Technology out of Utah. It's a high school, charter high school. I have a comment and a question. First comment is about the core curriculum, the Common Core. It seems to me that it kind of lacks in technology, and I just wanted to know the Common Core as it stands, kind of least common denominator core. Wanted to hear your comments about that, but the real question I had was about the last part about your curriculum. It seems to me that that might be a little bit difficult to add custom content to, which I think is a very important part to the teacher. So how would you address that?
I think, too, let me start with the second one, and then Lawrence, I could say a word about the Common Core. But on the second one, I think you're absolutely right. And certainly the learning platform itself is designed for teachers to bring in the content. And then when we develop our curriculum, there will be opportunities for teachers both to delete and to supplement. Because ultimately, as you probably know a lot better than I do, but certainly from my experiences, teachers want to be able to have solutions, but they want to be able to customize and devise and add. And so I think the key to the platform we've created is that it enables precisely the kind of flexibility you're talking about. And in some areas, people may want a more prescriptive approach, but that's not for us to decide. That's for you, your colleagues, and those in the space. You want to say a word about Common Core?
And the question, I think, was what the prevalence of technology in the Common Core. And I think you're right, there isn't that much. There's some in the science standards. But the good news is, for students these days, actually just doing the work and using the technology is, we think that just becomes part of how school operates. And so perhaps the idea is it's all technology.
But I think the good thing about the Common Core and worth focusing on is it's much more, there's too much learning in K-12 is what I used to call self-referential learning. What's the impact? How do you feel? All of which may be important, but really mastering difficult concepts, engaging complicated texts. We have a lesson on Frederick Douglass, and I've watched kids study Frederick Douglass, and this lesson insists that you get engaged with complicated text and understand one of the really big ideas. There's several key ideas, but an interesting idea that's not intuitive to most of us, and certainly not to most seventh graders, is what's the correlation between physical pain that Frederick Douglass as a slave feels and psychological pain. And indeed, if you do the work, you find that they're largely inversely correlated. When he's at his moments of greatest physical abuse and pain, he's actually psychologically not in that difficult a position, but when he has time to reflect and think and relax, his psychological pain about the state of his existence. It's very powerful. You can't learn that without actually engaging the Frederick Douglass. Whereas in so many schools I've seen, they say what it was like to be a slave, and is there still racism, and have you experienced racism, all of which is important, but it's really not we're really not developing the skills that kids need. And in that respect, I think Common Core is going to move the agenda forward significantly.
Thank you. I hope in this discussion you see why we've decided to take a K-20 approach, because you can imagine a student coming through the kind of education that Joel has described and then arriving at an institution where there may be, again, a teacher, some chairs, and expected to learn the old-fashioned way. The fact of the matter is that the transformation of education needs to carry the student in this kind of education from the day they enter the school building through when they graduate from college. I think we will be able to take one more question.
Hi, I'm Gideon Stein from Lacell Education. I've been asked to keep it really short, so how are you evaluating the writing response, the constructed response questions? Are they sent to the teacher, or is there some way that the teacher, that the system is analyzing those?
Yeah, both is the answer. So one of the great things that we can start to do is automate some of the analysis of the writing. So mechanics, for instance, subject-verb agreement, we're building tools, and others are working on tools that can automatically identify those issues, and in fact automatically start to recommend videos or content that can help kids solve those problems, which frees the teacher to essentially what the teacher's view is that that piece of writing from a student has already been marked up in terms of the mechanics, and they can focus more on the content and what it tells them about the student's ability to read the source text. So we're not automatically grading the entire essay, as it were. Does that make sense?
All right. Well, thank you very much. We really
Exactly.
appreciate it. Thank you.